What drew me to comic books when I was a kid was the art. Specifically, super detailed, in-your-face, dynamic art that leapt off the pages of the book. My appetite for comic books were at a fever pitch in the 90s. I didn't really notice the layout or the composition at the time. I was a kid. I think that kind of stuff was a little bit harder to discern back then. What I did take notice of were the details. And everything had more of everything. And I ate it up. I was there for it. I was there for all of it. This cycle continued until the perfect pairing of character and artist stopped me on my tracks. The artist was legendary Mike Wieringo, and the book was The Flash. I'll get more in depth about their influence in another video. I think what drew me to that particular book was a subconscious shift in my thinking. Honestly, I don't think I could have articulated it back then, and I'll do my best to articulate it now. I was beginning to realize the principles of less is more. It's BTS Thursday. After doing some super intense research, Wikipedia describes minimalism in art as movements in various forms of art and design where the work is set out to expose the essence, essentials, or identity of a subject through eliminating all non-essential forms, features, or concepts. Pretty heavy stuff. There's no way I understood that as a kid, and there's no way that's the reason why I was drawn to Mike's art and the character of the Flash. I think cartoonist Scott McCloud's Understanding Comics has a great explanation for this. In his book, Scott distills the human face in its simplest form and describes it as, the more cartoony a face is, the more people it could be said to describe. The less details these characters had, the easier it was for us as the reader to inhabit the shoes of those characters. The synergy of art and character allowed me for the first time to feel like I was the main character in the story. Thanks to Mike Wieringo's art, in Mark Waid's words, I felt like I was Wally West. What does any of this have to do with this Batman Beyond cover? Well, it's on this particular book that I'm actively applying the principles of less is more. Something that I've only been able to hit on a few occasions, and even then, it was sometimes accidental. The road to simplicity started back on my Detective Comics run. My initial attempt at my first issue was pretty standard stuff, but my editor Mark Doyle challenged me to do something different. I didn't know what he meant by something different, but I came to the realization that, being the secondary Bat book, I could experiment with composition and graphic elements. I didn't have to be so superhero-y with my covers. When I took over covers for Action Comics, I was probably more nervous than I was on my Detective Comics covers. Batman is such a unique character, and different visual interpretations of him almost always seem to work. Not so much the case with Superman. He is the all-American hero. He is the prototype of what a superhero is supposed to be. In other words, you draw him perfectly or you don't draw him at all. I drew covers for Action Comics sporadically. My first issue as its regular artist, I felt like I had to come correct. So I did this detailed, ink-washed, realistic-looking Superman. My layout was simple as I knew these covers had no title logos, and I could really exploit the upper 2/3 of the cover to catch someone's eye. Simple layout, but relatively detailed execution. As the series progressed, I became more enamored with catching someone's eye from far away. Details are great when you're up close, but when you're a good 2-3 feet away from the stands, can you even see the details? Personally, I think the answer is no. It wasn't until I got to this cover of Action that it came together for me. There was a version of this cover where I rendered the heck out of his body and cape. I remember turning the layers on and off, repeatedly looking at it with or without the details. The insecure part of me thought, if I handed it in like this, will they think I'm lazy? To this day, I struggle with this question constantly. Somehow, I found the courage to fire this cover off. I was so sure he'd email me back and say, "Where's the rest of it?" Or, This looks like a cardboard cutout, but he didn't. He actually loved it. I'm pretty sure when my time on Action was up, the same editor presented me with a few options of covers for me to take over. Strategically, I chose Batman Beyond because I thought it would give me the highest probability for experimentation. The first cover I did, I felt was a good compromise between detail and simplicity. But by the second cover, I felt the need once again to up my game by adding more details. My insecurities as an artist are hard to shake off. I think for a long time I equated value with detail. I had to remind myself I took this particular cover gig because I wanted to push the graphic element of my art and get a greater understanding of less is more. And this is the cover that I felt woke me back up. As I was working on these Batman Beyond covers, my work on Justice League was ramping up. If you've ever drawn a team book, detail is almost inescapable. Justice League gave me an outlet for any insecurities I had on the relatively sparse details I drew on my Beyond covers. Meanwhile, back on Batman Beyond, I primarily focused on improving my consistency in nailing a powerful composition. I mean, some were better than others. You can't bat 100. To me, all the extra flair and rendering I would add to my artwork was equivalent to doing some sick crossovers or a 50-foot three-pointer and padding my stats at the end of the night. Don't get me wrong, I still love extremely detailed artwork, and a lot of people know how to use just the right amount. The craftsmanship it takes is always impressive. But to me, a well-composed image that is sparsely drawn is like locking down your defense with no care for your stats and going for that chip. This cover marks the return of Terry McGinnis in the Batman suit after a few months of Batwoman at the helm. Even though this is his triumphant return, I chose to put him behind Batwoman because I knew you'd only see the upper 2/3 of the book on the stands, and his image would be the first thing you would see. One of the reasons why I love working digitally is my ability to try different things without committing to one specific thing. I tried versions of this cover with dramatic underlighting and even some backgrounds. One of the things I realized about the progression of my art is that more often than not, I've found myself removing elements from my art than adding stuff in. On this particular cover, I kept coming back to this simple black version. If I recall correctly, I think I even threw out the layer with the background, just in case I wimped out and chose to use it. I know it's digital, but no turning back now. Here's the thing about minimalism in my art, and maybe in your art as well. I don't think I could have skipped ahead to this point in my art unless I drew all those other detailed covers, or skipped my attempts at realism. To be honest, I found it easier to hide a flawed cover design by bombarding it with so much detail that you don't even notice how ill thought out the composition was. A minimalist cover relies so much on strong composition because the lack of flair in the illustration itself makes the shortcomings of your layout more apparent. With an extremely strong design, sometimes you barely have to draw anything. Less is more doesn't mean you're lacking in knowledge. In fact, it means quite the opposite. It's not just about drawing fewer lines or fewer shadows. It's about knowing what lines to use or what shapes to maintain. Your accumulation of knowledge will inform you of what to take out. So how can you improve your art by drawing less and achieving more? The answer, much like the whole theory of minimalism, is also quite simple. It's important to ask yourself these 3 questions along the way. What is this image about? Hit your storytelling goals through your composition and ideas. Don't try to nail it with details or how you'd ink this or how you'd color that. By knowing your subject matter or story, you are able to expand your ideas much easier, but it doesn't have to be that deep. It can be art for art's sake, and that's okay. My greatest struggle with these Batman Beyond covers is that I often don't know the story contents aside from who they want on these covers. So admittedly, I focus on design and making the covers pop. Does this composition work? Whether you're following the rule of thirds, using a triangle composition, or pushing your color contrast to guide the eye, these elements are an equal part of feeling in mathematics. There is a science to aesthetics. You can learn more about composition in my past video. And the last question is super simple. Does my work have clarity? Okay, you just finished a drawing. Now stand up. Seriously, stand up. Now take a few steps back. Can you still read your image clearly even when you're far away? If you don't have the room, just zoom out of your image. Something I do often is simply blur my eyes. Is it still readable? If the answer is no, go back to steps 1 and 2. Admittedly, sometimes hitting these 3 principles lead me to finishing a cover in a day or half a day. This makes me question the artistic merits of my art. Did I give it my all? Did I draw hard enough? Will they think I'm being lazy? Did I draw enough so that they know that it's Batman? It leads me to feeling like I'm not giving it my all. But here's the thing. I've been drawing comic books professionally for 20 years, and these observations that I'm beginning to apply to my artwork, I've only really been applying in the last 5 years. So I could say one of these 2 things. This cover only took me 4, 5, 6 hours to draw. Maybe I should come back in and add more details. Or I could say, it's taken me 20 years and counting in order to learn what to take out. Thanks again for watching, and if you enjoyed this video or learned anything, please like and subscribe. Hit that bell button if you want to know when the next video is, especially since I'm very sporadic at this. Share it with your friends, share it with your mom, share it with your cousins, share it with your neighbor, but do it from a distance. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.